Hi, welcome to the video. This is a 2008 Toyota Sienta, recently imported from Japan. And I'm doing a CVT service on it today. Before I go any further, by the way, apologies for the noise. There's some scaffolding, there you go, right on cue. Some scaffolding being put up next door. And we've got the old impact guns and, shall we say, some interesting conversation going on. So if you hear any of that in the background, apologies. 2008 Toyota Sienta then. It's done 102,000 kilometres. I've just imported it from Japan. You may know that's something that I do if you've watched some of these videos before. AndrewsJapaneseCars.com is the website if you're interested. So the last CVT fluid change on this, there's a sticker under the bonnet, was done at about 50,000. I think generally roughly about 50,000 is a reasonable interval for CVT fluid changes. I'm going to change the filter on this one as well. It's quite interesting because none of the parts diagrams actually show a filter, but one of the aftermarket parts suppliers sells a filter. So this may turn out to be a bit of a strange video if I take the pan off and there's no filter there, but I'm fully expecting there to be. So I've got a pan, gasket and fluid. It's Toyota TC fluid, and I like to use the manufacturer's genuine stuff for this, because I feel it's one of the many ways to minimise the chance of a CVT failure later down the line. I'll just open the bonnet. So the engine's all warmed up and I've checked the level before I start. The reason for doing that is so I know when I measure how much fluid I take out, I know that if I put roughly the same amount back, because I haven't got a manual for this, so I don't know how much I should be putting back, that when I put the fluid back, then I know I'm putting roughly the right amount back. There's the sticker to say it was done at 57,000 kilometres before by Autobacks in Japan. We're very fortunate here in that we have a gearbox that still has a dipstick, which is jolly nice to see. Don't know how well you can see that. We've got cold levels there, hot levels there. And you can see at the moment, it's just at the bottom of the hot. It has cooled down a little bit, so it may well be slightly higher up than that when fully hot. So I'll just get the car up on some ramps and then we can get started. I'm pretty sure that's going to be 14. This is a K210 transmission, in case I didn't already mention that. I'm just going to let as much of it drain out as I can, like that, so that I have as little as possible in the pan when I take it off, because there's quite a chance of spilling it everywhere when we do that. Now, the other thing to say is obviously I've got the car on ramps because it's just easier to raise it in the air to do it that way in my garage. But clearly we can't check the final level until it's back on the flat, until it's back on the flat and warmed up. So I'll be doing that later on. Okay, the dripping's slowed down, so start to remove these bolts now. These are indeed 10s. Bit of transmission fluid on the ratchet will obviously help it. Will last a bit longer. I'm joking. Okay. Right, that's loose now. So my intention is to tip it backwards and get most of the fluid into the drain pan. Time will tell. So as we can see quite clearly, this transmission does indeed have a filter. And even better news than that, the one I have bought to replace it appears to be the right one, which is jolly good news. So now I can confidently, semi-confidently at least, take that one off. We've already yielded quite a lot more fluid out of the transmission than we would have done had we not taken the pan off, and this should give us even more. We'll have a better look on the bench, but you can already see that this filter has got quite a coating of muck. These bolts are all the same length? No. So the one on its own, the back corner, is longer. And we've got an O-ring inside the hole there. Right, while the fluid's draining, let's have a look at what we've got on the bench here. So we've got the old filter, and you can see, just give it a wipe, underneath it is the same colour as the new one, but that's, I presume, very fine metal particles caused by the wear of the transmission, which happens naturally in all of these transmissions. This is at the bottom of the filter, so I've turned it upside down for showing it here, that have collected there. Over in the transmission pan, we have 3 magnets. And you probably spotted the indentations on the pan from the outside. These are to pick up most of that metal, and I guess there comes a point where they become saturated such that they can't really pick it up anymore. And I suppose that's another reason for taking the pan off and cleaning the magnets. They've got little indentations in the pan where they're supposed to go, so they need to go back in exactly the same place. You can also see why when you're, well, firstly it's better to have the front of the car up in the air like I've got, and secondly the drain plug hole isn't at the bottom of the pan, so that's why you can get a lot more fluid out by taking the pan off. So let's remove one of these if we can. Come on, there we go. So we've taken a lot of muck off in the course of removing it. I'm going to clean it better than that, by the way, but just to give you an idea. So that's one magnet, fairly clean, and then if I just wipe my finger across that one, you'll see the type of thing we're dealing with. So I'm going to give this a really good clean, take the gasket off, and then I will come back to you when it's all clean. Oh, look at that, you could eat your dinner off it, couldn't you? I've just lined up the new gasket. It's an aftermarket gasket which came with the filter. I'm always a little bit wary of these, just wanted to make sure that it matches up with all the holes and everything just fine, which it does. So now I'm going to clean the corresponding mating surface on the transmission, and then we'll start putting things back together. Alright, time to put the new filter on. I've put a small amount of fresh transmission fluid on the O-ring. Now that long bolt was on its own over here. Regarding torque specs, I couldn't find the torque specs for this exact gearbox, but I found some for a Corolla which I felt would do for me. And they were 11 for the filter bolts. That's all nice and clean. Okay, final check of the gasket and a final wipe of this, and then we'll put the pan back on as well. I get the feeling I could be waiting all day for this to stop dribbling. Indeed I could. So I'm just going to put it on the best I can. I don't think it necessarily needs to be dry. Get a couple of bolts there ready. So in case it isn't obvious, I'm doing all these up really loosely first of all. Two left and two holes left. That's jolly good. Right, so now I'm going to tighten them in stages, kind of hand tight first of all, working from the middle outwards. I say hand tight, they're not really much more than hand tight when they're torqued. Okay, the torque setting I found for these wasn't very tight at all. I think I am going to use a torque wrench, but it's only 8 Newton meters, so really not very tight at all. Right, how I've done them all, let's find out. Okay, time for some fresh fluid. I drained 3.8 litres out. There's actually a separate breather tube to the dipstick, which comes up next to the dipstick, so ideal for refilling. What I mean by that is we don't have to worry too much about air bubbling up through the dipstick tube. So we're registering above the cold there, which is, well, kind of meaningless because the car's not on the flat, but also at least gives you some confidence that you've got enough fluid in there to start it up, check for leaks, move it off the ramp, etc. Okay, let's start it up and run through the gears. So I'll let it warm up a little bit, check for leaks, and then we'll get it on the flat and get the level right. So here's the obligatory new and old fluid comparison video. Despite my slightly mocking tone, I think it's quite useful to do because when you take the dipstick out, the fluid still looks red. And indeed, I suppose it is, but that's the old stuff. And that's the new stuff. Not as much of the new stuff because it's bloody expensive, but yeah, you can see there's quite a difference there. So well worth doing. Okay, we're pretty much done. I didn't film the last bit of getting the level right because I figured you're probably capable of operating a dipstick without my instruction. So I've ended up adding probably about 300 mils more oil. The filter is absolutely saturated with oil and you can't get all of it out. So I guess that's part of the explanation for the difference between the measured amount that I took out and the amount I've put back in. So it's a case of checking that there's enough fluid in there that you're happy driving the car, driving it, warming it up, getting it really hot, and then checking the level. We're checking the level with the engine running and checking that the oil is between the two upper and lower hot marks on the dipstick. Really nice to have a transmission with a dipstick still. A lot of them don't have that anymore, in case you're wondering why I'm making a fuss about that. So yeah, really nice to have that. I hope this was useful, interesting for you. Feels good to have got it done. It hasn't made the transmission feel massively different, but then again, it didn't really feel like it had anything wrong with it before. But what the aim of the game here is preventative maintenance to ensure a long life for this CVT transmission. As I say then, hope it was useful for you. Thanks very much for watching. In due course, there'll be a video of this when it's all ready for sale over on my other channel, Andrew's Japanese Cars, and it'll be on the website andrewsjapanesecars.com as well. If you like this sort of thing, please consider subscribing and giving the video a thumbs up, and I'll look forward to seeing you again for the next one. Bye for now.